This is a great day for America, and a great day for girls and women, and for fairness in sports. And with that, I want to introduce our majority leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is another team effort where House Republicans are standing up for people who just believe in basic fairness. And today's vote should have been a unanimous vote. Yet, regardless of what political games people play up here, when people go back home and they're in their schools, they're competing, they just want to compete on a level playing field. The whole intention of Title IX was to create more opportunities for women to compete in sports. And yet it undermines the very fabric when you say a biological man can just play in a woman's sport if they choose to. And think we've seen over and over again how that just flies in the face of common sense, that it just doesn't allow for that same ability for the competition that we've gotten so used to and that we enjoy seeing. We want women to be able to enjoy those same opportunities in sports, whether it's at the high school level, the college level, or even the professional level. And so we came together today, and this is something that Greg Stubbe, Chairwoman Fox, so many others have worked on to say, let's just make sure that if women want to compete in sports, men can compete in sports, but men shouldn't be able to compete in women's sports. It's why you have women's sports. So it was an important vote today. I think that you saw a lot of really strong arguments for why we need to re-inject common sense back into this debate. And is our whip here? We've got the whip. Tom Emmer.
Thank you, Steve. Oh, hold it down. Hold it down. As a former hockey player and coach, I know firsthand the blood, sweat, and tears that go into playing any sport. Not to mention the countless hours of training in the off season so that you can compete at your absolute very best. Now imagine being a female athlete who has worked day in and day out to win. You get to the finish line, you tie for first, but then you have to give up your trophy to a biological male. Unfortunately, it's becoming a reality for more and more female athletes across this great country. The left's lunacy is robbing women and girls of equal opportunities in the name of inclusion. That's why House Republicans today passed this bill to protect the safety and fairness that we should have in women's sports and to make sure that no female athlete is ever forced to compete against a biological male, period. Vetoing this bill, as Joe Biden has threatened to do, would be a slap in the face to women's rights, science, and common sense. But in a House Republican majority, we're going to make sure that female athletes are given the fairness, safety, and opportunities they deserve. And we're not going to stop. But I want to introduce the lady that shepherded this legislation through the House, our chairwoman, Virginia Fox.
Today, Republicans are keeping another of our promises in our commitment to America. Today, we passed the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. If taken up by the Senate Democrats and signed into law by the president, as he should, and forget about vetoing it, it could definitely prove a bipartisan commitment to America's young girls. This bill is historic. Over 50 years ago, Congress passed Title IX, a provision of the Education Amendments of 1972 that was meant to protect women from unfair discrimination. In recent years, it's been used for the opposite purpose. Radical interpretations of Title IX have allowed men to slowly encroach more and more on women's competitions. American women and girls deserve better than what Democrats are doing to them. They deserve not to live in fear of losing a scholarship because a biological male caused them to lose it. They deserve not to live in fear of losing a spot on the roster. They deserve not to live in fear of losing a spot on the podium. That's why today is historic. This is the first step. It starts here by strengthening Title IX protections and returning to the promise of 1972. We're committed to protecting women from discrimination and women's sports from exploitation. And now I'd like to introduce the sponsor of this bill, Representative Greg Steube of Florida.
Thank you, Chair. And first, I want to thank the Speaker for bringing this bill to the floor. I want to thank the Chair for shepherding it through your committee. And more importantly, I want to thank the American people because of the American people putting us, Republicans, in charge of the House, this bill was passed because of that. Not a single Democrat today wants to support women in women's sports, in complete violation to Title IX that was created by Congress over 50 years ago to provide a level playing field for women to play and compete in collegiate activities and high school activities. And it's beyond the pale, in my opinion, with example after example that we have seen, and you're going to hear from some of the female athletes, of them losing different scholarships and opportunities and medals. I have a constituent, Emma Wyant, who lost a Olympic medal to a man who was competing in women's sports, who years before that was competing on the men's swimming team. And today we stand with America. Today we stand for women's sports. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you. Next we have, are you coming back up?
Yes.
Oh, Speaker McCarthy.
Well, as I said earlier, today is a great day for America, for fairness, for families, and most importantly, for female athletes. House Republicans pledged before the last election their commitment to America to protect women and girls in sports. Today, we kept that promise. I want to thank Greg Steube. He has fought long and hard to make sure this bill worked through. Why? Because he watched in his own district the unfairness. He watched women who would wake up early in the morning and train from a young age, sacrifice, only to find a biological man to compete. That was wrong, and we all know it's wrong. Unfortunately, today on the floor, not one Democrat could stand up for Title IX or stand up for women in sports. I believe that's wrong. And behind me today are just a few of the women that have experienced this. Macy Petty, Selena Soul, and Taylor Silverman. And there are so many more. These incredible women have dedicated their lives to the sports they love. We've watched it hearing after hearing to hear their stories. For years of waking up early and training late into the evening, they pushed themselves to the limit as humanly possible, made sacrifice, and they never gave up. They strived for excellence, and they achieved it. And they learned the value of teamwork and hard work. But because they were forced to compete against biological men, they lost out on opportunities that they deserved. They watched their peers lose out on opportunities they deserved as well. So these women did something courageous. They spoke out. They spoke out for equal opportunity, for privacy, for safety, for truth, for everything the previous generations of women who fought hard for Title IX. They are the current champions of those women 50 years ago who fought for equality, who fought for fairness in sports. And today, they had victory. Today, while the left tries to silence them, intimidate them, they will not be intimidated. Not for themselves, but just like the women 50 years ago. They're going to stand for fairness, they're going to stand for the next generation, and they're going to stand for what is exactly right. And with that, I'd like to call up first Macy Petty.
All right. What a great day. Hello, everybody. My name is Macy Petty, and I am a current NCAA volleyball player. So I'm still in the middle of all those early mornings everybody's talking about. I'm also a Young Women for America ambassador. It is an absolute honor to stand here today and celebrate with y'all the passage of the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act through the House. Thank you, Speaker McCarthy, for having me, and Congressman Steube for sponsoring this bill. I worked my entire life to become an NCAA athlete. I was that girl in high school who never got to go to prom, who never got to go on these fancy vacations, because I spent my weekends on the volleyball court. I would be traveling around, going to all of these various club tournaments to try and get recruited and eventually realize my dream of playing NCAA volleyball. Now, for the sake of including those who cannot follow the most basic and fundamental of rules that girls' sports are for girls only, Female athletes who sacrificed so much for their sport are being pushed out of athletics. Sadly, I have had to play my sport, volleyball, against a male at one of these volleyball tournaments while I was trying to get recruited. Men's volleyball nets are over 7 inches higher than female volleyball nets. So this athlete was playing on a net over 7 inches tall, or 7 inches shorter than he should have as a man. If you can imagine trying to play against somebody, imagine being 7 inches taller, right? It's a big difference. Suddenly, mediocre athletes can hit like All-Americans, and that's exactly what happened. These college recruiters were trying to evaluate my skills and see if I would be a good fit for their team and see the work that I've put my entire life into, but instead they watched this boy slam the ball in our face time and time again. A recruiter's job, the recruiters who were watching this game, their ultimate job is to bring titles and money back to their school, right? Well, this can obviously happen much easier with a biological male on court. So this ultimately strips the opportunity of scholarships and playing time, an issue that was supposed to have been settled 50 years ago with the passage of Title IX. So that is why I'm not going to be silent. As a female athlete, I see what sports can do for women. I see the self-confidence, the leadership training, the incredible experience of sacrificing for a goal. I will continue to speak up until all female athletes everywhere have fair competition. Today's passage of the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act is a great step, and I'm deeply grateful for everyone standing up here who helped make that happen. Thank you so much.
And now let's hear from one of the very first women to speak up with the courageousness of talking about the unfairness, Selena Soul.
Hi everyone, my name is Selena Soul, and as Speaker McCarthy said, I was one of the first to start speaking on this issue. I was forced to compete against 2 biological males in track and field in my home state of Connecticut. I raced against these athletes over a dozen times, and they would beat me out by 20 meters in the 100-meter dash every single time without fail. I lost out on countless opportunities. Most notably, I missed out on qualifying for the 2019 New England regional meet. I was kicked out of the 55-meter finals and qualifying for the New England meet by the 2 biological males, and I was forced into the sidelines in my own event because I was at the New England meet and 2 other events where I received all New England honors. I am eternally grateful for the House Republicans for passing this bill to ensure that no other girl has to experience the pain and heartbreak that I went through my 4 years of high school, and I will be grateful to them for the rest of my life, and I will continue to fight for this issue for as long as it takes. Thank you.
Thank you for your courage. And now let's hear from Taylor Silverman.
Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Silverman, and I have been skateboarding now for almost 12 years. And for the past several years, I have traveled around the country competing in events. In 2018, I went to an event in California where I was made aware that a male athlete was in the women's division. And then again in 2020, when I traveled to Illinois, the same thing happened. And the first couple times this happened, I honestly thought that this was going to be a funny story we laughed about one day, and it would be something everyone would agree was obviously unfair and not the way to handle it. But unfortunately, it continued on and got worse. So in 2021, in a Red Bull circuit, I went to the finals where I found out about an hour before the finals that there was a male in my division yet again. And this time, similar to the contest in Illinois, I placed second. And I also lost out on thousands of dollars of prize money. This athlete took $5,000 of the prize money meant for female athletes, not only placing first in the women's division, but also taking the prize for best trick. And I knew this was wrong, but it was intimidating to speak out about it. But as time went on and my emails to Red Bull were ignored and the concerns I had raised to the judges were ignored, I realized that if I didn't speak up, nobody would. And I had seen other female athletes speak up in other sports, so I knew that if they could do it, I could do it. And I knew that my story was not unique. But a lot of these stories we don't even hear about. So the few that you're hearing today are of many. But I'm very grateful to be here today. It's an honor to be here. And I'm grateful for everyone who's fought to reinstore fairness and equal opportunity in women's sports. When I was a child growing up playing sports in school, I never had to worry about this. but unfortunately, fairness was robbed from me as an adult. But I refuse to be the last generation of girls to experience equal opportunity, respect, fairness, and even safety in many sports. And finally, I am happy to say we are headed back in the right direction.
These are just three of the most courageous women, but for all the young women out there, I want you to know this. We've heard you. We will fight for you, and we will continue to fight for you. We kept our promise. Last year, we pledged if we had the opportunity to be in the majority, we would bring this bill forward. We would stand up for fairness. We'd stand up for you. We'd stand up for Title IX. And that's exactly what we did today. We asked others across this country to join with us to help us pass it in the Senate and get it to the president's desk. So every woman is protected in fairness and in competition. With that, let's open it up for questions. Yes, ma'am. You know, it works through committee. The Supreme Court has made that decision. It goes to the states. The states will take up that issue. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. All right, I'll take it. But well, but your question to us right there is that you're saying that Macy doesn't know that. But that's what you have said in your question so far. You know what? It's not your place. I will take the questions, and I'll decide when they ask a question. I'll decide when I answer. Go ahead. Yeah. And this is not the point. I would say we know them, we understand them. It doesn't have to do with it. What it plays is this is athletics, okay? When I grew up in athletics and I wanted to wrestle or you wanted to box, it's based on your weight, even though we were both biological. When we went and played football, we had to weigh in every single day. Why? Because they wouldn't have somebody when we were younger over 150 compete with somebody that's 100 pounds. Because you know what? Muscle mass made a difference. There's a difference in volleyball. Why would you have in men's sports a volleyball 7 inches higher net than below? So we can understand the other person. We can go to dinner with the other person. We can hang out with the other person. But there's a reason why Title IX was created. There's a reason why there's men and women's sports. There's a reason why there's a professional basketball for men and women. It's about fairness. And if there's one final fiber of America, it's about giving people an opportunity that if they work hard, if they sacrifice. I've listened to Macy talk a few times. She didn't go to a prom. Not because she wasn't asked, because she made a decision that she was going to dedicate her life and her time to excel in a sport. That she would take weekends away that her family would sacrifice to spend the money to drive her hours away to compete. And that moment where she can compete, where she had spent years for colleges around the country to see that she can grab a scholarship, that all that time away was going to pay off. Why? Because she could have that college paid for because of what the sacrifice she made where others would not make that decision. To a biological man who steps in, who that all time that he played, he now gets to play with a net 7 inches shorter. How many basketball players would love to play with the hoop a little shorter too? So it's not about whether do we know somebody. Yes, we do them. And then when we know them, we also understand biologically they're different. And it's about muscle mass and it's about fairness. Yes. I haven't read the bill, but just like any other bill like this bill, bills go through committees, and after the bills go through committee, it's just like I said, you work the process, and the bills go through committee, they come to the floor. Yes. Yes, ma'am. I answered your question. Yes, ma'am. I answered your question. Yes, ma'am. Yes. I think we're in very good shape. We just rolled it out yesterday. We're working, talking through all the members, and I don't want to break all expectations. I want you to follow it. I want you to be on the floor. I want the anticipation. I want you to see. I want you to see as the clock goes up. I want you to write stories like I'm teetering, whether I could win or not, and the whole world hangs in the balance. And then I want you to write a story after it passes. Would the president sit down and negotiate? Just like we've done every other time before. Would the Senate, are they going to take up another bill to name the next month maple syrup? Are they going to honor the UConn team that they won a basketball tournament? Or will they sit down and work for the American people? I mean, I don't know what the month of May will be about in the Senate or what they'll honor, but I think they ought to honor the American public and actually take up a debt ceiling. Yes. You know, someone asked me that question when we were trying to defend everybody's safety here in D.C.